You two are just amazing. I really love that. This is something kind of cool. I don't know if you ever heard of divine timing, but it's like where the universe all comes together and it just fits. Well, earlier this week I was sitting in meditation and I was listening to that song, I Am Light, and I was ranting to my mom, like, everybody in the world should wake up and listen to this song because it's like the total truth and blah, blah. Anyway, so then I was in that meditation, I was feeling like surrendering, like, okay, Spirit, like what does this mean? The discovery of God is personal. That's our message this morning. The discovery of God is personal. And then it like just occurred to me, and so I wrote down a note, tell Lindsay that you're going to use a quote from I Am Light, and the quote is, I am divinity defined. I am the God on the inside. I am a star, a piece of it all. I am light. I am divinity defined. I am the God on the inside. And that basically encompasses the entirety of the message. But so thank you for that. But I didn't get a chance to give her the note or tell her. So that was the cool part. I'm like, I forgot to tell you that. Another really amazing thing that happened to me is that this week, Barbara Charwood called me during the middle of the week after my, as Oprah calls, the ugly cry last week on stage. And she goes, I was looking through don't worry, I won't say it, but I was looking through my birthday cards, and I found this one. I just wanted to share it with you. And it was the most hilarious birthday card. It was the most hilarious thing I'd heard, like, ever. And it has to do with all these different religions and a word I can't say on stage. And it was so funny. But what also happened is Marilyn Van Dyke, right over here, she randomly sends me some emails, and she sent me this email with a bunch of different quotes about, or jokes about God and different things like that. And so that I can share with you. So, so there's this Sunday school teacher, and she's got the kindergartners, right? And so she's asking them, she says, now, are you guys praying before dinner, before you eat your dinner? And they're all shaking their head, yeah. And this one little boy in the back, he's like, no. And she goes, Johnny, why aren't you praying before dinner? And he goes, I don't need to. My mom's a good cook. That was so cute. Thank you, Marilyn. That was hilarious. So, something I found this week was this this article on God and this whole study on God. So I'm just going to ask you guys, what percentage of Americans do you think believe in God? Whatever that might be. 80, yeah. How'd you know? You read the study too? Oh. Okay, so what percentage of that 80% do you think, when they hear the word God, believe or envision or believe that it's an old man in heaven? 56. Give America a little credit. 56. But I thought, well, that's really interesting. And because I didn't I grew up very, I guess what do you call it, spiritually progressive. I grew up in the science of mind philosophy where, God is omnipotent. It's like I was always taught that it was God is in and through all things. Like that really doesn't make sense to a 5-year-old, so I just figured God was air. But it's still like that was my construct of God, right? So I find it really interesting to learn about what does that mean that God is an old man in heaven? Like where did that come from, and how did that kind of grow? And so this article starts to tell us that first, we'll talk about God being old, okay? So the reason why so many feel that God is old is because, the concept of God has been around kind of forever. Like since the beginning of civilization or of humanity, I think it started with the prehistoric shamans, right? So there's always been this idea of God, so it feels really, really old. Except, like with Einstein's theory of relativity, where he showed that time is only a construct within the physical universe, And since God is like the creator of it all, it doesn't have to be subject to the law of physics, right? So God doesn't, it can't be old. It can't be young. It can't be middle-aged. It just is. It's that infinite that has always been and that will always be. But that's where the kind of idea that God is an old person came from. And so then it came up like, the next thing is, well, is he a man? Is God a man? You know? And I was thinking, where did that idea that God is a man come from? And then I realized, like, even in our Science of Mind textbook, the masculine pronoun was just the way that people wrote for many, many, many years. And so they talk about the Father because God is like this great power that creates things, right? It makes you think of like a loving father. But also, it didn't really help that Michelangelo created this like amazing painting called the Creation of Adam that kind of looked like E.T., you know, where like God's this like really buff white guy who's like touching the finger of Adam, right? So now I get it, like, oh, you know, it looks like God's a man, this really buff white guy, and so it made sense. I mean, in its way, like I learned, I guess I should say. And so then the last part is God in heaven, like somewhere where we can't go to until we're dead. Well, this was the interesting part. I don't know if last week you remember, I just barely touched on the concept of the three faces of God, being the God outside of us, like the third person God, like when you talk to God, and then the internal God, right? That I am an expression of God, and then the God is in and through all things. And so this was really the definition of heaven. So back in the day, I don't know when, I wasn't there, heaven had three different meanings. It meant the spiritual invisible realm. It meant the like the stars and the moon and the sky and the cosmos. And then it also meant the air in between us. And you could really choose any which one of these, but for whatever reason, the other two fell off, and it ended up that God, the man, was in the spiritual, invisible realm that we can't get to. And I just thought, it's really fascinating because those three definitions of heaven together really are the definition of what we call like an omnipresent divine intelligence, right? That it's in this invisible realm, that it's all around us and within us. And so I thought that was kind of interesting that even in the midst of this anthropomorphic, is that what you call it? Anthropomorphic? Tell me. She's right here behind you, Mom. She's like, she's the expert, I think. This construct of it, that even within that, there was always that kind of idea that of an omnipresent divine intelligence or power greater than we are. And I thought that was fascinating. It was fascinating to me. And this morning we are recognizing or exploring that the discovery of whatever that we call God, Ernest Holmes would call it the thing itself, that thing that we can't describe, it's nameless, wordless, but it's just that presence, that divine something that we all feel and know and nudges us, pushes us forward, but can't quite grasp because we're probably not supposed to. And Ernest Holmes, in Living the Science of Mind, it's our book of the month, he says that we cannot find God outside of ourselves. That the road to God is through self-discovery. Because there's no place where we end and God begins. There's no place where we are not a part, an aspect of life, of that magnificent, sacred life, even if we can't feel it or understand it. And so I want to share with you this story that I heard. It's about a lion and a sheep. And it really reminded me, The lion is the, anyway, well, you'll understand afterwards. Think about the song we just heard and think about yourself, and I'm going to tell you this story. So there was this mom lion, a lioness, who was pregnant, and she had her baby cub, and then she got sick and died. And so the cub, sorry, it's going to get better. And so the baby cub lion is walking around, and he finds this herd of sheep. And the mom sheep, she takes him in as her own. And she loves him and cares for him. But the other sheep are like, what is wrong with you? You don't baa like we do. You don't look like us. You're really ugly. But this poor lion cub, he tried to be like them. He tried to baa and he tried to eat grass. And they said, you're a disgrace to the sheep community. And he thought, oh my gosh, I'm just destroying our community, and I'm not good, and I don't know what to do, and I'm trying. And so one day there was this older lion, and he comes from another jungle, and he sees this herd of sheep, and he's like, licking his lips. And so he comes down, and he was like, rah, goes to attack them, and this little lion runs with the sheep. And this older lion's like, what? What is going on? And so he decides, forget the sheep for a second, and he goes and pounces on this little lion. And he says, why are you running with these sheep? And the little lion goes, please, please, please don't hurt me. I'm a sheep, please. And this big lion, he goes, you're not a sheep, you're a lion. And the little lion goes, no, I'm a sheep, please. I'm defenseless. I can't protect myself. Don't hurt me. And so this older lion, he's like, what is going on here? So he picks the little lion up by his neck or whatever, and he brings him down to the river, and he said, look in the river. And so the little lion looks in the river, and to his astonishment, he is a lion. He's a lion. And all of a sudden, he was like, whoa, and he roars this big roar, and all the sheep are hiding in the bushes and trying to figure out what's going on. They start running away, and all of a sudden this little lion's like, I don't have to be like verbally abused anymore. I don't have to feel like I'm different anymore, because I see myself, and I have a herd now, and I really fit in, and it feels so good to see who I really am. Have any of you felt that way? Like maybe you were like the outcast of your, church community, family, friend group, something, because you couldn't quite swallow what they were trying to feed you, And then it just dawned on me right now that the hero is the lion, because they're their own hero. They're the ones who recognize that we're all the lion, right? We're all the lion. But sometimes we get such distorted thinking and such false beliefs and negative thoughts about ourselves because for whatever reason we bought into our peers or our society or the friends or the faith community or our parents or whatever, whomever, whatever it was, that we started to, be weighed down or diminished our light. And so it could be so easy for us to see, oh, now they are God. They are spiritual. They are beautiful. They are magnificent. But me? No, I'm a piece of crap. Like, just ask my family or just ask that church I just went to, right? I mean, this is what happens. And so then you come here. Well, I know that every person in this seat right now has come here because they felt that little nudge that said, I don't really know. I'm going to figure it out for myself. Like, maybe we asked a few too many questions, and so we all ended up here because they didn't want to answer them, maybe. And then I'm standing here telling you that God is inside of you and that you're magnificent and you have divine intelligence and all you have to do is use it, and you're thinking like, what? Or maybe you're not thinking, but I would think, that is a load of BS, right? Old belief system, whatever you want to call it. And you're like, how am I supposed to find God inside of me when I am bad or ugly or fat or stupid or whatever distorted thinking we've got going on inside of us? But then at some point, we do feel that push to look in the river and see the reflection of that great lion within us. And we find a herd that's willing to support us and love us and say, it's okay. Whoever you are, however you show up, it's okay. You want to question everything? That's okay. And I think that that's really, really something special. And that's what triggers, that's the beginning of that journey of self-discovery, of self-awakening. It's this expansion of consciousness. And I want to share with you two things that that even in the midst of feeling maybe false beliefs or negative things, something that kind of brings me back. And maybe it can support you too. And that is to live like Frankl and to contemplate like Merton. And what I mean by that is when you think about Viktor Frankl, this amazing Austrian psychologist turned Holocaust survivor, and all of the excruciating things that he went through during living in the concentration camps and starving to death and having to wear shoes 2 sizes too small and being shoved, I'm sure if you've read A Man's Search for Meaning, you understand. That's one of his most famous books that talks about those really horrific things. But what he says, and the lesson that supports me in everything, is that we can find meaning and can only find meaning in this moment, right now. And I love that, because how many of us here have thought that maybe when we figure out what our life's purpose is, then we'll have happiness or joy or fulfillment? Have you ever felt that way? Like, oh my God, I have to figure it out first? And it's just not. Because our life's purpose is to be alive. That's why we have life, is to be alive, to live. That's the purpose. And to find meaning in the moment, in this moment, whether we're in a concentration camp or in a workplace or wherever we are. The self-discovery of recognizing I'm breathing. I can feel within what he would do is even when they were beating him in this place, he would think about his wife, which made him feel love. And love was the meaning that he needed at that moment. And so at every moment we can feel into the meaning for ourselves. And Dr. Ernest Holmes, the founder of the Science of Mind philosophy, in the Living the Science of Mind book, he says, why put off? Why deny ourselves the instant privilege of recognizing who we are right here and now? Why put it off when it's instantaneous? You just have to buy in. You have to buy in to the idea that maybe somebody else doesn't really know what they're talking about and that you get to figure it out for yourself. Maybe other people don't get to tell us what is so and what to believe, but that we get to think for ourselves and feel for ourselves and decide whether or not it's our truth. And then the other thing is to contemplate like Merton. Thomas Merton, he was like, have any of you ever read anything by Thomas Merton? Yeah. He was this really amazing American Roman Catholic he was a monk, a Roman Catholic monk, and he was a poet, and he was a social activist, and he was just this incredibly deep spiritual man. And he wrote this book called The Seeds of Contemplation. And it's something so simple yet so profound that I could not find words to describe to you how to practice contemplation. But so if it's okay with you, I'm just going to read what he says. He says it so much better than I could. So it's called New Seeds of Contemplation. If you want to, you can close your eyes or just relax or let your mind feel or think or drift, because this description of contemplation is almost a meditation in and of itself. Contemplation, it is spiritual wonder. It is spontaneous awe at the sacredness of life, of being. It is gratitude for life, for awareness. It is a vivid realization of the fact that life and being in us proceeds from an invisible, transcendent, and infinitely abundant source. Contemplation is, above all, awareness of the reality of that source. It knows the source, obscurely, inexplicably, but with a certitude that goes both beyond reason and beyond simple faith. For contemplation is a kind of spiritual vision with both reason and faith, which both reason and faith aspires by their very nature, because without it, it must remain incomplete. Yet contemplation is not vision because it sees without seeing and knows without knowing. It is a more profound depth of faith and knowledge too deep to be grasped in images, in words, or even in clear concepts. So what that feels like to me, that contemplation, I was a congregant here for a long time before I was the minister here, and I would sit somewhere over there. And I would look outside, and there was like a tree blowing, and you could see the little cottage over there. And I would listen to Reverend Josh, and like there was this deep contemplation experience that I would have. And it reminds me of like being outside on a sunny day, and a breeze passes by, and you see the trees begin to come alive and dance and move around, and you can feel that awe that's in life. Have you ever felt that or saw that when the trees start dancing because the wind is blowing and you just feel like everything's alive? That's that kind of contemplation. And that's where we bring ourselves to the feeling, to the knowing, and to the exploring of our inner self, that inner divine self, and to that very personal experience of the God of our understanding. In the Centers for Spiritual Living, we don't teach people what to think, but how to think. We don't tell people how to live their lives so that maybe someday when they're dead, they'll be happy. You can still do that, but that's just not what we're here for. We teach people and study. We study and practice and teach. All of us together, not just me. Every one of you is teaching me. I love getting the wisdom from you all. We teach and study and practice spiritual principles and tools to help us live a healthier life, a happier life, a more fulfilled life here and now. And sometimes it's hard to find that personal experience of God, and it's easier to see it in someone else than it is to see it in ourselves. And if that's what it takes, that's okay. But at some point, we have to realize, we have to recognize that we are that lion, that we are the hero of our own lives, that we are the lion, and that we can roar and with our courage and our strength and be our own truth. Be our own truth. So I just want to invite us to move into a prayer now. And this prayer is more than a prayer. It's an affirmation. It's a knowing. I'm not asking anything. I'm seeing with that eye that sees more than I could ever imagine. And a spiritual conviction moves through me right now, knowing that every one of us, although seeming separate and apart, are actually a part of one life, a part of one divine mind, and that we are centers of consciousness in the mind of God, that we are the center of our own universe, and that we, with our spiritual conviction and our self-discovery, recognize more and more of that truth. I know right now that we were able to let go of the baggage from both hands, both shoulders, all the backpacks of stuff we've been accumulating on our back. We can let it go right here in this instant, in this moment. And I affirm that we are doing so now because I know that in my mind, in my heart, I feel it. And I know that I'm one with each and every person here, each and every life force, because there's only one. There's only one. I'm so thankful, so grateful for this. And so it is. Thank you.